here's a little extra practice with the diagramming. If you look at page 72 in your grammar book on the mixed practice that we did not do in class, I thought I'd take just a couple of these, kind of walk you through them for a little extra practice. Let's look at, well, let's start with number 1. After the Babylonians, centuries passed before people developed mechanical clocks that could accurately measure seconds. Centuries passed is going to be your first subject and verb. Before people developed mechanical clocks, that could accurately measure seconds. So you have a complex sentence here with 2 subordinate clauses. So we're going to have 3 baseline diagrams, centuries passed, people developed, and that could measure. Okay? And then, of course, your modifiers are going to go off of those. And I'll show you an example in a minute. Number 2, what gave clocks their name was the bells that early timepieces struck at each hour. So what gave clocks their name is a subordinate clause. It's a noun clause acting as the subject of the sentence. That means that we are going to put it on the little stick guy. We're going to raise him up off of our baseline in the subject position. And then we're going to diagram that subordinate clause. Then we have the linking verb was. Was what? Was bells. Remember, after a linking verb, we have a diagonal line, a slanted line. Was bells that early timepieces struck at each hour. So the next subject and verb there is timepieces struck. Okay, let's take a look at what 1 and 2 would look like. And guess what? I just happen to have the answers. So here's the first one. Centuries passed. When did they pass? After the Babylonians. Tells us when. Then before, on the dotted connecting line, people developed clocks. What kind of clocks? Mechanical. And then what kind of clocks? That could measure seconds. How could it measure? It could measure accurately. This goes under clocks because it is an adjective phrase that's describing clocks. So we always want to put things off of the word that they're modifying when they're acting as a modifier. Number 2, remember I said we were going to put it on the little stick guy because it's a noun clause acting like the subject of the sentence. What gave what? Gave name. Clocks is an indirect object. Remember, we can imagine there's a little 2 right there, 2 clocks. If the 2 were there, it would be a prepositional phrase. Because the 2 is omitted, it is an indirect object. And then what gave clocks their name was our linking verb. So we have the slanted line, bells, predicate nominative. Okay? Which bells? That timepieces struck. Timepieces struck what? It struck that when at each hour. Early timepieces. I'm feeling like at each hour probably goes under struck. Yeah, it does. And that's why we don't always trust this book. Because you know that Mama Parker finds the mistakes. At each hour actually modifies when it struck. Right? So we're going to put that as an adverbial prepositional phrase under the word struck. Okay?